I got to the point where I was just waiting on him to die.
That's right.
And that sounds terrible.
Kristen, Wes, thank you guys so much for being on the Recovery Valve
Yes, sir.
podcast. I'm so honored to have you here. We're going to dive in and talk about, some of your story, Wes, and we'll talk about Ground 40 and the work you guys are doing together as a couple. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what Wes was like when he was out there.
Oh, you don't want to know what I was like when I was out there. Scott, I was born to a broken home. Coming into this earth, I had a broken home. My parents were together, but they weren't really together. They lived in different rooms. My father was an alcoholic, and my mama, I'll say this till the day I die, she was a good mama, but she was a terrible father. And they divorced when I was about 5 years old. And some things happened in my house. I don't have to go into too much detail after my father moved out and moved in with his mom. To where it just wasn't a safe place for me, and it really skewed my view on love, especially how a man and a woman love each other. It just skewed it real bad. So my dad's house on the weekends was my safe place. Although he was, intoxicated and passed out the whole time, I was not being abused because that was what was happening in my own home. And by the time I was 10 years old, I was set on my uncle's couch and told that my father would have to register as a sex offender.
Oh, wow.
So my safe place, my father's house, I couldn't go anymore. And we're in the Christian culture. We're in the South, the Bible Belt. Mm-hmm. And I recognized at a really early age, anonymity is what they teach you in AA. And the church really teaches it. They don't really recognize that they teach it, but they teach it because they don't want you to have that kind of problem in the church house.
Really?
And the Bible tells you to confess your sins one to another because the prayer of a righteous man availeth much. But what happens in the current economy of Christians and the culture of Christians now is we present a life that really doesn't have any problems. We're so afraid to tell people that after Christ, we have issues still yet today, and we still need a Savior, and we still need a Redeemer, and we still need a rescuer. I was blown away by your pastors today, talking about real
Dave
things,
and Ashley, yeah.
real problems, real trauma, and they have still faced it. Because there are a lot of people who stand on platforms and act like everything's okay, while the people who are listening to these messages are dying inside but afraid to say anything. That's where I got to. I knew the church was not ready for my kind of evil, my kind of problems, and my kind of pain. I mean, from molestation to addiction to a broken home to all these things, we can't help you with those problems. And we still see it today.
Yeah.
But by the time I was 10 years old, I couldn't go back to my dad's house. By the time I was 13, I had become so rebellious, my mom couldn't control me anymore, and I ended up getting kicked out and moving in with my dad, who would rather be a friend than a parent. He was an alcoholic. I had experimented with marijuana. He was an amputee, so he had all kind of medication, and I went from marijuana to opiates pills to crack cocaine, to methamphetamines, and by the time I was 19, I had dropped out of school, had my first kid on the way, and was a full-blown heroin addict.
Oh, wow.
Had 2 more kids that I treated exactly how my father treated me within the next 2 years.
So generational. We talk about that a lot on here. It's generational.
It was bad, man. I hated my father. And everything that I hated about him, I became.
Do you feel like a lot of this comes from the relationship we have with our dads?
I'll say it this way. I do believe in generational curses. There's a lot of people that don't believe in them. They'll call them generational sins. But I know men who've never met their father, and I know their father. And they have the same mannerisms. They have the same sin nature, the same temptations, the same draw. And
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And as much as I hated my father, as much as I hated my life, I turned around and gave it to my children. Started getting arrested when I was 19.
Did you guys know each other in addiction?
She knew me in addiction.
We dated probably 8 years in his addiction. So, but it was an off and on kind of thing. And so in the beginning of our relationship, there was a lot of loss, trauma bonded us, I guess. Within the first 6 months of us dating, his dad passed away.
Oh, wow.
And then his brother passed away. So every time we would get to the point where I was like, okay, is this too crazy? Something like that would happen, and I would be like, I've got to help him. I've got to, I was just enabling him. At that time, I did not have a relationship with the Lord. I probably would have identified as a Christian, but I didn't have a relationship with the Lord. And I didn't know about a relationship, really. So he was my God, so
Really?
he was the idol in my life. And
How old were you guys at this time?
we met when I was 23, he was 24.
Yeah, I was 24.
So, we were young, but we're just so immature. It took us a long time to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, youth and drugs and drinking that's immaturity.
Right, right. So basically, I followed him and I lived like a drug addict. I myself didn't do drugs. I did drink alcohol, and I didn't think that was a problem because I had a handle on it. But I always made terrible decisions, so it was a problem. It was just socially acceptable, where his was really the bad sin, because his was illegal, and that's how we gauge things in society. We don't gauge it by what God says is sin. We gauge it by what people have told us is wrong. But I have my own sin nature. I have my own sin life. But when you are in a relationship with somebody in addiction and they have become your main focus, it's hard to recognize the sin in yourself, because you're so focused on them and what they're doing wrong and how their sin is affecting you. That's kind of how I lived. Now, when it was good, it was really good. Wes is a lot of fun, and he loves hard. So I just felt like he loved me, more than anybody could ever love me. You know what I mean? Because he was just crazy about me, but it was really just crazy.
That's probably true, though. That's probably true.
We just, this is what I think about a lot, is that the Lord has saved us from so much, even when we were running from him, and we had no idea of his existence even, and how involved in our lives he was. There's so many instances where I wasn't doing the drug, but I should be dead because of the situations that I was in with him.
So you guys met and you were still in active addiction but had just got out of jail?
We met at a bar, at a karaoke bar.
That's the best place to meet, probably.
For sure. He was just like the life of the party, and everybody's, talking to him or whatever, and he's trying to talk to me,
Yeah.
So it's just my sin nature. Like, I want to be seen too, So we started talking.
She left off a digit on her phone number, and I know she did it on accident because she was.
I say I gave him the wrong phone number, but he disagrees with that. But
I do.
So anyway, but I did go back because I thought he was cute. So I went back to the karaoke bar the next week.
Funny thing is
Yeah.
her hair is naturally curly.
Oh, okay.
So
Mine too.
the girl that I saw, the girl I saw the first night, her hair was straight, and then I go back the next week, and I see this really curly headed girl with big eyes, just beautiful, and I went up to her and I said the exact same thing to her as I said to the girl the week before, and it was her. I didn't know they were both the same woman.
Not a good move, Wes.
It was not a good. It worked. It worked.
Oh my gosh.
It worked. Cause
Got you that other digit, though, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, before we get back to this episode, I want to take a second and thank the team over at Norval Fixture and Equipment. They provide service for all of the industrial and commercial needs in the restaurant industry. To the team at Norval Fixture and Equipment, thank you guys so much for your sponsorship of the Recovery Valve podcast. There's going to be women that listen to this and need to hear your story because they can relate to having to figure out how to be the supportive spouse or the supportive co-parent.
Right.
And so it's hard.
It is hard. And I will say this, and I say this because I get the opportunity now. I don't work for Ground 40, but we get to do this ministry together. It's not a program for women, but they don't come in without a family. So they don't come in without somebody that has been affected by their addiction, right? So whether it be their wife, their girlfriend, their sister, or their mom, or whatever, I get to speak to these women. They see this picture, and I have to be like, I don't have all the answers. I don't have the perfect way to do things. First of all, I did every possible thing wrong to begin with. I followed him around. I enabled him. I was in crack houses or in somebody's driveway waiting for him to go get something, and it's dangerous people. When you're in addiction, you feed it however you can. You're just surviving. You just go into straight survival mode. So he could have said that he loved me, but again, his idea of love was skewed. And if you don't know Christ, like, we can't love if we don't know the love of Christ. Not really.
Right.
We can do our version of it, but it's never Christ love.
If you knew all of that was going on, what kept you in the car? What kept you with Wes?
Well, let me help.
Okay.
Because she tried to leave me
I
a
did
couple
a
times.
lot,
Listen,
yeah.
like she said, my version of love was so skewed. But I had watched my parents divorce. I'd lost everything, man. I lost a lot, and I found somebody who actually cared for me, and it was strange. And I didn't know how to love her back, and I didn't know how to put her first. I moved to Myrtle Beach with her, thinking if I could get away from where I was, I could beat this addiction. Everything's good for 3 months, maybe 3 months, and it happens, and she tells me to leave. I come back home, and my dad died, self-induced heart attack from benzodiazepines and alcohol. And I call her, and I'm like, I need you. So she comes down here. My addiction starts spiraling out of control again, and she's going to leave. And my brother gets in a car accident and loss of life. And I said, I need you to stay just a little bit longer. And she did. I don't know why she stayed, but I don't know. I don't know if it was
She
the
loves you,
compassion.
buddy.
It was there. There was a love. There was a form of love that was there. And then I ended up going to prison for 3 years. The stupid things that I did, you couldn't have wrote a better story. I was so messed up, man, and I did not know the Lord. And I did not have respect for people or things, and I just got tired of going to jail. I've been arrested 82 times. So
82 times.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not because I'm Pablo Escobar or I'm not a career criminal. I'm just everything I did, I got in trouble for.
Yeah.
But I would act like I was hearing impaired if I was shoplifting.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yes.
Tell me that again. You would act like
So-
you were,
so if I was
you would act like
shoplifting-
you're deaf mute.
Not mute.
Not mute. I
Not
could
mute.
talk.
Okay.
If I was shoplifting and I was approached by somebody in the store or loss prevention, and they would start talking to me, I would just act like I could not hear what they had to say, and I would ask them if
Sign
they knew,
language.
if they knew sign language, and if they could talk real slow, I'd try to read their lips, and it got me out of a lot of.
That got you out of trouble?
Man, it was wild, and
Until it didn't. Until it didn't. Yeah.
Until it didn't. I got arrested at a Walmart in Concord, Kannapolis, and they took me out in the police car, and the guy's feeling really sorry for me, and I'm
And
like,
they're talking in front of him because
so I know
they don't-
everything that's going on.
yeah.
I know everything that's going on, and I know that it's working because of what they're saying to each other.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, and
The
he's
lady
like,
was crying, right?
they were-
Because she was so upset that she had busted you and she felt so bad.
"Oh, I told
yeah.
you know."
Because
I
you
just
said he needed money for a hearing aid is why he was
it was
stealing.
terrible.
Yeah.
I did not know the Lord.
I didn't either. I used to steal pain pills from the lady that rented her trailer to me, and she was dying of cancer.
Oh man.
I mean,
yeah.
we think through things that will get us what we need. Criminals are some of the smartest people. They're-
Manipulative. Yeah.
Yes, to
Yes.
get what they want.
So the police officer comes up, and she's like, "Look, we're sorry. We don't want to do this." I'm like, "I'm hearing everything going on," and he comes and gets me. He goes, "What's your name?" And I just said, "Christopher Robinson." I don't know why.
Wait a minute, who is that? That's from Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know. It's funny, man. I don't know. So we go out to his car, and he's like putting my name in, and he's like, "This isn't coming up for anything. You've never been in trouble." I was like, "I've never been in trouble." He was like, "If you're lying to me," like talking real slow to me, "if you're lying to me, you're going to get charges." And I'm like, "It's my real name." And he's like, "There's nothing in the records for you to ever been in trouble. I don't believe you." And he looked at me dead in my eyes, and he said, "If you're lying, I'm going to hit you with another felony." And I said, "All right, man, look, my name's Wesley." I wasn't in handcuffs or nothing. I'm sitting in the front seat of his car. He said, "What'd you say?" I said, "My name's Wesley." So he gets out, goes around the car, and handcuffs me to shackles to my feet, and then goes back over and runs my real name. He's like, "Oh, you got felony warrants out." And he goes and gets the lady out of the store and makes me tell her that I'm not really hearing impaired. And she let me have it.
I bet she did.
She let me have it. I ended up going to prison, got out of prison, convinced her I'm sober now. And I think that lasted a month. But during that short time, she got pregnant with our now 10-year-old. And something happened in her where she was no longer concerned with me being happy or taking care of me or enabling me. She was set on she's going to have this baby and she's going to do the right thing by this baby.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
Some of these stories are funny or whatever, but it was hard, and it was abusive verbally, mentally, physically, but it's your normal. So it's your comfortability. So you're living in this chaos, but that's where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to get out of it. And once I had Harlan, it was like the Lord opened my eyes to how he loves me. And I had not known that kind of love. And so once I had him, I wanted something different. I wanted a real relationship with the Lord. I was curious, immediately curious. And that's the best way I can explain it. And that was only from the Lord because I did not grow up in church. I grew up in the Christian culture.
She had
Right.
a drawing to the Lord. And
did.
I was getting worse in my addiction. And we were on and off again.
Eventually, I got to the point where I was just waiting on him to die.
That's right.
And that sounds terrible.
No.
But I would go to work and he would be calling me nonstop because there's no boundaries in addiction, right? So
Right.
he doesn't have any respect for my job. He doesn't care how he's making me feel or what I look like, or he was harassing me pretty much. He's determined to kill himself.
Yeah.
And he was doing heroin, and if he was doing it today, he would have been dead then, because there's some fentanyl and carfentanil and all that goes around now.
I tell my wife the same thing. If fentanyl was
Yeah.
around when I was out there, I would not be here today.
When I went to jail the last time, there was so much in my system, I had no idea what was in there because,
Right.
you're just doing everything.
How old were you when you got sober?
30.
30?
He had run out of money, and I worked at the bank, and I could cut his card off. So I had cut his card off. So he comes to the house in the middle of the night, and we had a big fight, and he left. But it was physical. He leaves, and I'm just devastated. Whatever. The next day,
So I'm driving back and forth from
yeah.
Wilmington, and I fall asleep behind the wheel. Drive off in a ditch, windows bust, the headlights pop out, the tires they're running out of air, and I'm like, I wonder if I can get this thing to Charlotte. This is another 50-minute drive, and it made it. I drove all the way to Charlotte. I'm talking about 2:00 in the morning, headlights hanging out. I make it up there. My guy comes and meets me, and I turn around to go back to Wilmington in this truck, and was going to plan on wrecking the truck in Wilmington so they didn't know. Well, apparently it's illegal, at least in the state of North Carolina, to drive a truck like that down the road. And
I would say so. If your
I know
headlights
that
are not
because-
pointing in the direction they're supposed to point, they're pointing at the road.
Union County Sheriff's Department had about 14 cops following me down the road like a backwards parade. I mean, they had the blue lights, and I was in the front, and they pulled me over. I'm talking about 3 weeks of doing this. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I didn't want to go back to jail, but I didn't want to go back to Wilmington either. I didn't want to go back to Charlotte. I just really wanted to find a hole and crawl in it and die.
Right.
So they pull me over. I pull over to a gas station. They get me out of the car. Veteran tag on this truck. They don't call anybody. They don't report it stolen, nothing. They don't even ask. They take me out of the car, put me in the back of the police car, and they take me to Union County Jail, where I'd been 80 other times. And I start detoxing like I'd done every other time. And I end up in medical. And by day 13, they got a specialist in there seeing me. They're like, something's not right. Your body's not responding. And I thought, I'm like, here I am. I'm going to die. The officers thought I was dying. The specialists thought I was dying. The chaplains thought I was dying. Everybody thought I was dying. And I would like to tell you that the Lord revealed himself to me in there, and he didn't. He didn't. They gave me something to eat. I got my weight back up, and they put me into a normal block. And then for a few days, I was just wrestling on how am I going to get bonded out. My bond was $100. And I couldn't find anybody who cared enough about me or didn't care enough about me.
Or just didn't want you to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, $100. And I ended up going into the life skills program in the Union County Jail, which is a faith-based, Christ-centered program. And a man came in there, and he shared the gospel as if he believed it. Not just sharing it just because he wanted everybody to know what kind of information he has. This man came in there and was like, you can be radically changed by the power of the Holy Spirit. And I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. He's like, I'm telling you, you can be different. And I said, all right, I'll bite this. I go away for a minute. I come back. I said, here's the cool thing, man. I want to be saved, but I'm still going to die a heroin addict. And he said, who told you that? I said, what do you mean? He said, who told you that you're always going to be a heroin addict? I said, brother, I've been in NA, AA, secular programs my whole life. Once an addict, always an addict. He said, what does the Word of God say? He forgives all my iniquities, and he heals all my diseases. When the old is gone, the new can finally come in. He said, let the new come in. You don't have to be the same thing that you were when you came in this place. And I'm like, this is beautiful. So it's a 7-week program. So for like 4 weeks, I'm on my face every day, just crying out to the Lord to change my circumstances, to change my situation, to change everything about my life, to fix my life. So I'm in there, I'm praying, 5-week program. They come and take me to court. So I go upstairs, and I'm like, Your Honor, there's a Christian program in the jail. I've never finished anything. I said, if you let me finish this, you'll never see me in this courtroom again. I said, you'll never see me in that jail again. You let me finish that one thing. I said, I need whatever it is they have in there. I need it. And he looked at me like I had a third eye. And he said, do you realize I'm going to let you go home today on probation? And my flesh was like, Wes, you need to get out of here before they change your mind. But my spirit was like, no, you remember all those prayers? Mm-hmm. I said, Your Honor, if you'll let me stay in that jail, you'll never see me again. So he let me complete the program. And I'm in there praying in that prosperity vein that the Lord's going to fix my life, that she's going She's going to take me back. My kids are going to love me. My mom's going to love me. I get out of jail, nobody will talk
None
to
of
me.
that happens.
Yeah,
None of that
yeah.
happens.
No.
I'm like, what in the world is happening? I ended up going to the homeless shelter, and I'll never forget it. I go in the back from communal living at the jail to communal living at the shelter, and I'm crying out to the Lord. I'm like, I thought you were going to fix my life. Like, I thought you were going to fix my life. And audibly or not, I heard the response with, your life's not the problem, your heart is. Let me fix your heart. He says, if I give you all these things back right now, you'll squander them.
Yeah.
He says, let me work with you. You walk with me. Don't worry about anything else. And walking is what I did. I didn't have a vehicle. So I started out walking. I had my headphones, and I started listening to Christian music almost everywhere I went. I had 4 or 5 Bibles that I carried in a man purse, and they were all different translations because I didn't know what I was doing. But Jack, my mentor, he walked this out with me. And then from the shelter, the Lord prompted me to start a halfway house. I didn't have a house of my own.
I didn't know what the Lord had for us at the time, but He was softening my heart because I was so angry at what He was willing to put His family through to feed this addiction. I was so angry that He had lied so much, and that with this
And you have the right to be angry.
Right. I went into my son's room. He was probably 10 months old at the time, and I just was so convicted to pray for Wes, and I hated Wes at this point. Like, he was just, I was so mad at him for everything that was going on. I was just angry. And so anyway, but the Lord broke my heart and said, you have to pray for him. That's this child's father, And so, again, Harlan was only 10 months old, and I prayed for him. And that's something I'm just really just grateful for, that He would give us that piece of the puzzle to look back on and remember when things are hard now.
So was that program in jail, was that your sobriety? That's your sobriety date?
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that something?
And it wasn't until I stopped chasing sobriety and started chasing Jesus that I found freedom.
Yeah.
Because it became my God. And if sobriety was my God, what a very terrible God that it was. Because on my own, sober or addicted, I am in trouble.
Yeah.
But with Jesus,
I can get that.
Yeah, for
it
sure.
was beautiful, man. When Jack told me that I could honestly be a new creation, supernaturally changed, supernaturally transformed, filled with the power of God, to not just be set free from the penalty of sin, but be set free from the power of sin. Now I had a choice. I never had a choice before, and I didn't know it. When the enemy came and tempted me, I had to say yes. And when Jesus came along and He said, trust in me and I'll give you a way to overcome those things. So, that's been 10 years now. And shortly after the Lord set me free, like 3 months, the Lord's like, I don't know how He prompted me to do it, but you had a halfway house. So now we got, Ground 40. We take guys out of prison, out of recovery, out of addiction, out of homelessness, out of high school. We got 7 different properties, and the Lord did it. The Lord did it. I cannot explain it any other way. There was always a desire to offer up free discipleship, a free recovery program, a free homeless shelter, a free food kitchen, a free clothing bank, like all these things. And now we do it. We bring in guys every 40 days.
So it's men only.
It's men only.
yeah.
But
Okay.
the beautiful thing about it is when the men are with us, we take care of the whole family as best we can.
Because they've been financially burdened, so if they need help, we help.
Now we got those 7 properties, and we do it for free.
That's good.
We do it for free. We're not really tied to anything.
So these men are in your program for 40 days.
They're 40
That's the
days is the
first
first
40
part of
days.
the program. We have a 4-phase program.
Okay.
So 40 days is the fasting part of the program, wherein they come in and they're detoxing off the world, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They're making sure that they understand that there is nothing that this world can really offer to help them. After they complete that, the staff will sit down and say, okay, we'll go assessments. Are they ready for the next part? Because some of those guys, they
After
could have been
40 days aren't ready.
detoxing for almost
Yeah.
40 days.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, they really didn't get any of that true fasting period. So we'll assess them, and then they'll go to our ranch property for 2.5 months, which will house 26 guys. Then after that, we'll do the same thing for another 2.5 months. We have a property called Restoration House. They'll go over there for 2.5 months. And from that property, that's where we do that community interaction. We take care of the widows. We take care of the orphans. We go out and serve our community, the one that we tore apart so much, and we do it for free.
That's awesome.
We do it for free. And this teaching these guys to be a servant instead of selfish.
Yeah.
So they go out with a very low expectation that they're going to get anything in return. And we're not out there trying to support the ministry off cutting Miss Betty's yard or building a ramp
Right.
for somebody who doesn't have the finances to do it. This is what we do.
Yeah.
And the Lord has been so kind to us. And then we have 4 transitional houses. Our hope is that a man will go back home to his wife
If he's married,
if he's married. But if he's not, they'll.
In the transitional houses, that's when they have the opportunity to work. So he's made relationships with,
Good businesses.
good businesses in our
Yeah.
community that have leaders in the business that love the Lord.
Yeah.
Because
And it's crazy how
matters.
people trust us now, like in our recovery.
It's wild,
Taking
isn't
10
it?
years, but
Yeah.
people will,
Well,
if you're doing something to change the community.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
They wanna
I
help
got
you.
so many law officer friends now.
Yeah.
It's wild, yeah.
I go into jails. I go in the courthouse. The Lord has been, to stand in front of these judges who knew me.
So let's say there's listeners out there right now, though, and they know that they need to come from whatever state they're in,
That's right.
and they need to get in contact with you guys. Do you have a website?
We do have a website, ground40.org. We're on Facebook, Ground40. We're on Instagram at Ground40. You can look me up, Wesley Keziah. I'm on Facebook. I'm on
TikTok, yeah.
Instagram.
But I think something really important to say for if you are interested in being in the program, it's not a mama that's calling, it's not a girlfriend that's calling her wife.
That's right.
It has to be the guy because
Yeah.
again, this is a free
They have to want
program,
it.
They
and
have to
it's
want it.
and
Yep.
it's
That's important.
there's only so much space, right?
There is
right.
so much space,
So-
and if they're going to, and it is a waiting list for them to call. But if they'll call, we'll get them somewhere for life preservation until we can get them in the door.
Yeah.
We do have a very high success rate with men who complete our program.
I want to thank you guys so much for being on the Recovery Vow podcast, Wes. It's been
sir.
great to connect with you through Rhett. Kristen, we'll be praying for you, and we are so thankful for you to come on and share your testimony today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for being here. So glad to have you. Hey, thanks for tuning in today's episode of Recovery Vow Podcast. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to connect with us, you can connect with us through email at recoveryvow@gmail.com, our website, recoveryvow.com, or you can find us on our different social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. But we would love for you to go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. If you would like to pre-order a copy of my book, Marriage After Addiction, Take Back Your Life Together, you can do that through the store at exomarriage.com, or you'll see a link on any of our social media platforms. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Recovery Vow Podcast is brought to you by Goldmec, Newsom Electric, S&S Supplies, Carpet Cleaning Pros of Augusta, Rhett Walker, Atlas Health and Wellness, Norval Fixture and Equipment, Augusta Lawn and Turf, the Augusta Dream Center, Bagwell Insurance, Sally Kohler Photography, Burroughs Elijah Attorneys, Communigraphics, Kendra Neal Studio, Kendrick Paint and Body, Coleman Construction, Augusta Magazine, State Farm Insurance, Craig International. And I want to say thanks to everyone else who's contributed to the Recovery Vow podcast. We couldn't do this without you.